This is the story of a U.S. senator who refused to play along, exposing the hypocrisy at the heart of the climate movement. He asked the questions no one else dared, pulling back the curtain on the double standards that so often go unchallenged. Because, in truth, it's not really about the climate, it's about power. The power to dictate how others live, while keeping their own privileges intact. The ruling class demands sacrifice from you but exempts themselves. They drive luxury cars, dine at exclusive restaurants, and enjoy comforts they tell you to abandon. Under the Senate's bright lights, the double standard was laid bare for all to see. The contrast between words and actions became impossible to ignore. For years, elites have flown private jets to climate conferences, scolding you for driving a truck. Their carbon footprints dwarf those of ordinary people, yet they claim the moral high ground. They own sprawling mansions but tell you to live small, to shrink your dreams and your lifestyle for the sake of the environment. The gap between their rhetoric and reality grows wider every year. When the spotlight turns on them, their own lifestyles are suddenly off limits. They dodge questions, avoid cameras, and slip away from accountability. This isn't about one professor or one university, it's a pattern that repeats itself across institutions and generations. The message is always the same: do as I say, not as I do. They preach environmental purity while enjoying the wealth and privilege they publicly condemn. Their actions reveal a truth their words try to hide. The real question isn't about carbon. It's about honesty, integrity, and whether those who make the rules are willing to live by them. The Senate Budget Committee was business as usual, until Senator John Kennedy began his questioning. Kennedy's style is simple, direct, and cuts through the noise. He targeted a Tulane University professor, a self-proclaimed climate expert, warning of apocalypse. The professor, armed with credentials and certainty, urged drastic government action. He was there to justify massive spending and regulation. Kennedy listened, then asked questions, not about science, but...
Professor Keenan, you teach at Tulane?
Yes, sir, I do. I have that privilege.
And you have your own website, KeenanClimate.com, is that right?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. And you describe yourself on your website as a globally recognized thought leader. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
about integrity. He referenced the professor's own website, where he calls for a moral awakening and demands universities lead by example. The professor insists institutions must reject fossil fuel money. Kennedy simply held the professor to his own standard. The room grew tense. This wasn't an academic debate, but a cross-examination. The professor shifted from expert to man on the defensive. Kennedy wasn't challenging climate science, he was challenging the man and his institution.
You recently joined a lot of other academics. You signed a letter demanding that elite institutions and universities stop accepting money from fossil fuel companies. Is that correct?
This is correct.
You consider Tulane an elite university?
I would like to think that we have a high standard of excellence in our education and our research.
Okay. Well, the Murphy family of Murphy Oil and the Deming family of Murphy Oil have recently given Tulane $25 million. You think, have you called on Tulane to give that money back?
The professor wasn't just any academic. He'd carefully crafted a public persona as a climate crusader, a figure who stood at the intersection of science and activism. His reputation extended far beyond the classroom, making him a recognizable face in the ongoing battle against climate change. His website is filled with dire warnings about the future of the planet, urgent calls for moral action, and impassioned essays demanding immediate change. Every page is a rallying cry, urging readers to see climate change not just as a scientific issue, but as a moral crisis that demands personal responsibility. He insists that universities must lead the way, divesting from fossil fuels and refusing all oil and gas money, no matter how tempting. In his view, higher education should set the ethical standard for society, showing the world what true leadership looks like.
You give paid speeches, do you?
On occasion, I do.
You have your own agent, I believe, according to your website, Lee Bureau.
This is correct.
And how much do you charge per speech?
It varies depending on the audience, the amount of preparation work that goes, and the amount of follow-through. Usually,
The last paid speech you gave, how much did you receive?
I'm happy to follow up on it.
You don't remember?
I do not.
Do you give that money to Tulane?
I do not.
You keep it?
Yes, this is outside of my capacity as a
Right.
professor. Well, it's not, they didn't give that money to my unit or the department or school that I work
Have you
in.
called on Tulane to give that money back, or you think that's okay for them to keep it?
It's their prerogative, not mine.
Okay. But you think, but yet you just signed a letter saying that all elite universities should refuse fossil fuel money? Did you put a footnote in there and say, except my own?
Well, what I'd like to say, Senator, is that I believe it raises a conflict of interest for those that research climate change that are supported by the fossil fuel
Yeah,
industry.
but then why don't you ask Tulane to give the $25 million back?
Well, I think in the context, if that money were to be used to support climate research, information, disinformation, or whatever it may be, then that may be an appropriate conflict of interest. But I think in the context of which
You don't
Tulane
see
is
the
doing,
hypocrisy here?
it is a hypocrisy in those that may read and interpret it as such. I see
Maybe
it-
it's like,
He frames this as a moral imperative. Accepting fossil fuel money, he argues, is complicity in environmental destruction. To him, it's blood money, tainted by the suffering and damage caused by the industry. He's given countless speeches, written articles for major publications, and made this crusade his very identity. His words echo in lecture halls, on op-ed pages, and at rallies, always urging others to join the fight. He positions himself as a purist, someone unwilling to compromise with what he calls the forces of darkness. In debates, he draws a clear line. There can be no middle ground with those who profit from pollution. Yet his activism is also lucrative. He's paid handsomely to deliver this uncompromising message to private groups, corporations, and at exclusive conferences. The very system he criticizes also rewards him for his outspokenness. He tells others to change, to reject the corrupting influence of fossil fuel money, and to make sacrifices for the greater good.
I don't find that to be an equivocal comparison between space meant for students who must reside at a university.
you don't see
and
the
those that-
hypocrisy in that?
It is your finding and interpretation, sir.
But you don't see the irony of the hypocrisy?
I'm going to go ahead and say no.
Okay. I kind of gathered that would be your answer.
His career is built on holding others to the highest standard, even as he navigates the rewards of his own activism. The image he projects is that of a tireless, principled climate warrior, someone demanding that universities lead by example, no matter the cost or controversy. He insists they must reject dirty money, divest from fossil fuels, and set the standard for ethical action in a world desperate for leadership. This was the man who now sat before the Senate, his reputation preceding him into the chamber. But Senator Kennedy was about to test whether the professor's carefully constructed image would withstand real scrutiny, or if there were cracks beneath the surface. Would the professor's actions truly live up to his soaring rhetoric, or would the hearing expose uncomfortable contradictions? As the questions grew sharper, would the mask slip under the pressure of public examination? The confrontation would reveal the truth. The stakes were nothing less than credibility itself, for the professor, for the movement, and for the institutions he claimed to represent.
You also participated in another article here criticizing Houston for building new buildings and McMansions. And you said, I'm going to read your quote. I don't want to misquote you, Professor. That means we have to change our consumer preferences. You could have a super efficient, energy efficient mega mansion in Houston or the suburbs, but it's still a mansion. You're still over-consuming space. Did you say that?
Yes, sir, that's based on work as a member of the IPCC. Our research suggested that reducing our footprint in terms of total spatial footprint would have significant impacts on the decarbonization of the built environment.
And so you're saying that people should live in smaller houses because larger houses contribute to CO2 emissions?
100%, Senator.
Okay.
This Senate showdown was more than theater. It was a window into elite activism's soul. It exposed a deep hypocrisy in the climate movement, demands for your sacrifice, but none for themselves. They take energy company money while telling you to give up your job. They build bigger buildings while telling you to live small. This isn't an isolated incident. It's the hallmark of a disconnected ruling class. They judge from within their bubble, insulated by wealth and power. They fly private jets to lecture you about carbon footprints. The gap between their words and actions is the point, not the exception. This hypocrisy erodes public trust and breeds skepticism. People wonder if the crisis is real or just a power grab. Honest debate is impossible when one side won't live by its own rules. If the crisis is real, those who sound the alarm should lead by example. Until then, they're not leaders, they're performers. The time for lectures is over. The time for integrity is now. Senator Kennedy's next question cut straight to the heart of the matter. What about Tulane University's own funding? The senator's tone was pointed, his gaze unwavering as he shifted the spotlight from abstract policy to the very institution employing the professor. Kennedy highlighted a fact that couldn't be ignored. Tulane, the university where the professor worked and built his reputation, had recently accepted millions of dollars from a major oil company. This wasn't a minor grant or a hidden transaction, it was a public, celebrated partnership. The irony was glaring. The professor, who had spent years condemning the oil industry as immoral and destructive, was now linked, through his own employer, to the very companies he denounced. The contradiction was impossible to overlook. The room fell silent. The tension was palpable. The audience shifted in their seats, sensing the weight of the moment. The contradiction was undeniable, and the professor's discomfort was visible. Here stood a man whose job was to urge universities to reject oil money, yet his own university had just celebrated a massive oil donation with fanfare and pride. The optics were damning. Kennedy pressed further, refusing to let the issue slide. Had the professor in all his advocacy ever urged Tulane to return the oil company's money? Had he taken a stand where it mattered most? At home? If the professor truly believed in his own rhetoric, the answer should have been a resounding yes. After all, moral conviction is tested not in public speeches but in private actions. But instead, the professor deflected. He spoke of academic freedom, of institutional processes, and claimed it wasn't his place to intervene. The words rang hollow in the charged atmosphere of the hearing. This, from a man whose entire platform was built on telling other institutions what they must do and how they must act. The sermon is for the congregation, not the priest.